اجلاس آینده ایران در نیویورک همزمان با مجمع عمومی ملل متحد.
Dear compatriots, esteemed comrades, I'm very happy to have the honor to address a group which shares the same viewpoints concerning the most fundamental issues in our country. We all seek the overthrow of the religious fascism ruling our country, with all its faction and groupings. We all want a pluralistic republic based on the principle of separation of religion and state. We all defend, regardless of our ethnic, nationalistic, religious, or traditional origin, the territorial integrity of Iran. We all defend equal rights for all constituents forming Iran, regardless of their nationality or religion, and want to institutionalize those rights and equality in the constitution of the republic that will assume power after the mullah's overthrow. We all want to have a free and prosperous Iran that would spread friendship and coexistence among neighboring countries instead of warmongering and interferences in their internal affairs. Our people say to the reactionary mullahs ruling Iran, leave Syria alone, think of us. These are our collective and shared points here in this conference, far outweighing of our differences. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, all signs point to the fact that the mullah's regime has entered its final phase. This regime is facing overthrow with no exit avenue. Through sheer repression and terrorism, the mullahs try in vain to confront the explosive rage of our people from all over Iran, whether in north or south, our Kurdish, including in Kurdistan, Khuzestan, Baluchistan, and other parts of the country. Outside Iran, this regime tried to force the international community to retreat through belligerence. They have called Syria Iran's 35th province and spend the country's wealth on supporting the dictatorship there while large part of our people live under the poverty line. They consider Sana'a as the fourth regional capital under their control. Last Friday, however, after the attack on Saudi Arabia oil facilities, Khamenei representative said, and I quote, "Today Iran is not confined by its geographic borders. Today, Iraq's Popular Mobilization Unit is also Iran. The Lebanese Hezbollah is also Iran. Yemen's Ansarullah is also Iran. Syria's Patriotic Front is also Iran. Palestinian Islamic Jihad is also Iran. Palestinian Hamas is also Iran." End of quote. Meddling in other countries and export of terrorism is a pillar of the regime's strategy for survival, which the mullahs try to portray as their sign of strength. Since 1981, the Iranian resistance has been insisting that export of terrorism and fundamentalism is integral to the mullah's regime. Khamenei considers himself the leader of the Muslims worldwide. Article 11 of the regime's constitution is explicit, and I quote, "The government of Islamic Republic of Iran is missioned to build its general policy on basis of coalition and union between Islamic nations and to try to contribute to the political, economic, and cultural unity of the Islamic world." End of quote. It states in Article 154 that the regime, and I quote, "should support the righteous struggle of the oppressed against the arrogant power holders anywhere in the world." End of quote. Of course, the real oppressed are the Iranian people. The Iranian people who are brought to ruin thanks to this regime. The more this regime is weakened and isolated inside Iran, the more it needs of export of terrorism and fundamentalism and warmongering. This could not be further from the truth. That what they are doing is a sign of weakness and not their strength. The regime would also lose its reason for existence and its driving force if it were to stop export of terrorism. Thus, it would accelerate its downfall. Far from being only a claim, it is Khamenei and other leaders of the regime who have explicitly said, and again I quote what Khamenei had said, "If we do not fight in Syria, Iraq, or Yemen, then we would have to fight in Isfahan, Tehran, and Shiraz." End of quote. The regime counts on the inaction of the international community with regard to its aggression. In 2003, Iraq's gates were thrown open to the regime, and they soon turned the country through a gradual occupation to a springboard for other objectives in the region. This was a long-forgotten dream of Khomeini and the rest of the mullahs in Iran since the Iran-Iraq War in 1980 to 1988. It is not without reason that the regime officials considered themselves as the real victor of the 2003 war in Iraq. On January 11, 2019, Secretary Pompeo said in Cairo that the United States no longer cuddle the mullahs and that, and I quote, "the age of self-inflicted American shame is over, and so are the policies that produce so much needless suffering." End of quote. He was right to affirm that when Americans, and I quote, "partners with enemies, they advance." End of quote. The mullahs are calculating that they will not have to pay the price that they should pay for their aggression before the US presidential election. So in recent months, when attacks against oil tankers, oil facilities in the region, shooting down the American drone, and other belligerent acts have taken place, and also increased their uranium enrichment and using IR-5 and IR-6, they were emboldened to undertake a major act of war against Saudi Arabia territory when they saw no action to their belligerents. NCRI President-elect Mrs. Maryam Rajavi called this act a major step and a new phase in the warmongering aggression of the mullahs, adding that exerting power and decisiveness is the only language the mullahs understand. Inaction only emboldened this medieval regime. Ms. Rajavi added, and I quote, "The ultimate solution to rid of Iran's ruling religious fascism as the source of all crisis in the region is a change of this illegitimate regime by the Iranian people and their organized resistance movement. Dear friends, the mullah's regime could and should be overthrown. This is the aspiration of the vast majority of the Iranian people. 2 years ago, a number of senior regime's officials acknowledged that 96% of the population is against them. The overthrow of this regime is within reach. Is within reach as never before. And the NCRI is determined to achieve this goal. This regime has been condemned 65 times by the different bodies of the United Nations for gross violation of human rights in Iran. 120,000 political executions, and for having imprisoned and tortured more than 500,000 people for their political beliefs. Hassan Rouhani admitted during the regime's elections that in 38 years they had done nothing but execution and imprison the Iranian people. That's his own admission. The world is aware of the massacre of 30,000 political prisoners in 1988. But this was not Mullah's sole massacre. The massacre in Qarena in Kurdistan, the massacre of our Arab compatriots, the killing of the Baluchis and the Turkmens and the Sunni Muslims cannot be forgotten, nor can the egregious violations of women's rights and the criminal act of this regime against Christians, priests, and Jewish and Baha'i citizens. None of them can be forgotten. A regime claiming to be God's one and only representative on the earth has bombed the house of God in Mecca in 1986, 1987, and massacred God's pilgrims. Simultaneous with the UN General Assembly, when the world leaders are present here, and as Mrs. Rajavi has urged, we call on the international community to act consistent with the UN Charter and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as well as international law. Therefore, it should acknowledge the right of the Iranian people, all the freedom fighters, the PMI, the Peshmergas of freedom, to overthrow the religious fascism ruling Iran. Expel this regime from the United Nations. This regime has usurped Iran's seat and has brought nothing but shame to the United Nations. Previous UN Security Council resolutions on the mullah's nuclear weapons and the ban on uranium enrichment should be reinstated. The UN Security Council should refer the regime's human rights record and its other crime, especially the massacre of 30,000 political prisoners in 1988, to the International Criminal Court. The United Nations should immediately and firmly condemn the regime's recent aggression and belligerence in the region. The regime's regional adventurism should be halted, and the IRGC and its mercenaries should be expelled from Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, Afghanistan under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter. Given the activities of the regime's mercenaries in the US and its unleashed terrorism in Europe, the IRGC, the Terrorist Codes Force, the Ministry of Intelligence and their commanders and agents should be included in the UN terrorist list. Islamic fundamentalism and the caliphate, under the guise of Islam, be it Sunni or Shiite, is a global threat whose heart beats in Iran under the rule of the mullahs. A threat we have exposed and warned about since 3 decades ago. For the sake of peace and democracy, and for freedom and equality, we are all in need of an international coalition against the religious fascism ruling Iran. The National Council of Resistance of Iran called for building a society based on freedom and with clear demarcations with dictatorship, gender, ethnic, and class discrimination. We advocate a non-nuclear Iran seeking peaceful coexistence through international and regional cooperation. We are convinced that Iranian society can be relieved of the poverty, unemployment, lack of housing, water shortages, and environmental disasters. But the prerequisite to return and to establish the people's sovereignty to their rightful owners, the Iranian people. This is the starting point and the raison d'etre for us and our resistance. I thank you very much.